Hey guys, it's Whiskey River here, and welcome back to Path of Titans. In this video, I'm going to cover Raptor packs, and specifically Deinonys and the Achilobator, and how they can work together to form mob boss packs in Path of Titans. Thank you for clicking on the video, and hope you enjoy it. If you do, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I do live streams every Wednesday, usually in the morning, late mornings, 10 to 11 o'clock Pacific time is when I'll start them. So if you happen to see that pop up, you're welcome to come and join me and have some fun. You might notice right here, this Torbo that we were fighting actually died of fall damage. It's kind of a funny situation. He was trying to avoid the pounce from Honey, and when he did, he got into a weird spot on that rock and actually took fall damage and died. So that was a pretty funny situation I wanted to share with everybody. I was standing there on that rock and this mate came up and hit me one time. You could see the health that it took from me. It took most of my health away, just one hit. So that's the disadvantage of these little guys, is they don't have a lot of health. They're really squishy, but you can use this ability you see me using here called Slicer, and that will give you your health back. You take a hunk of meat off the enemy, and then it gives you some of your health back. And they also have another ability called Lucky Feather. And then what Lucky Feather does is that when you get hit, if it would have been a fatal hit, as long as you have more than 40% health, and instead of killing you, it leaves you with like almost half health and some stamina, and you become immune for a couple of seconds until you can get away. About 10 seconds of immunity, so you can get out of danger, and then regroup and come back again to fight some more. So that's the reason I like the Deinonys over the Latin. They've got a lot of abilities that help them survive. They've got their double jump. That's the highest jumping creature in the game. And then I combine that with the jump height subspecies. The subspecies on these are all really good. Health recovery is great. Acceleration is also another good one. That one's arguably a better one. That's the one I was using for a long time because it helps you accelerate in and out of fights. But it's already got such good acceleration. I kind of found that I really wasn't needing that much, and the jump height is 25%, so it can actually help you jump to areas that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to, and it can help you escape and survive in certain situations, especially when you're playing solo. There's a couple of things in the game that can jump almost as high as the Deinonys, so it'll help you have that little extra edge that you might need to get to a place that's safe. But acceleration is another really good one. And then health recovery, you can use that in between combat timers to get your health back quickly, and it'll also stack with that Slicer ability to give you even quicker health regen when you rip the chunk of meat off your opponent. So all really good subspecies, but I happen to choose the jump height one. They're decent by themselves, but in a pack or in a mob boss pack is really where they shine. And that's what we're using in most of these videos here, is doing the mob boss pack with an Achilobator. And so that's kind of what I try to form most of the time when I'm on these, is try to get a mob boss pack going. You can take down apexes and subtitans, and anything big and slow that you can pounce easily is a really good target for them. On this build here, I use regular bite. It's got Raptor strikes as well that you can use, which is really good for when you're pouncing stuff, but it doesn't work as great when you're just hitting and running. So your little, if you run in and get a bite and run out, that's not going to do a lot of damage if you're using the Raptor strikes. But if you're using the regular bite does bleed, depending on the server that you're on. Most of the time they give it bleed, and so you can use that to help bleed the opponent out. And you can also use it when you're doing hit and runs, and it's not so dependent on having to pounce the enemy. Like, you can run up and bite them and run away, and you're going to do a lot more damage than you would if you just had Raptor strikes that way. So Raptor strikes really just only does the damage when you build up the stacks. I run that in addition to the regular bite. I run Sever Tendon, and that'll do some damage. And it's like a little kick attack that you do that'll do damage and bleed. It does bleed when you're pounced, and then it does damage when you're just running and you use the kick, like right there. But it also applies a status effect, and it's called Sliced Debuff, and that reduces the movement speed of the target. And it's like 10% per hit, and it stacks up to 5 times, so you can get 10% slower movement speed on your enemy. And that's very helpful in addition to just doing damage to them as well. So the bread and butter is the pounce and the bite, and you get your opponent bleeding, and then you get them to run around, and that's how you can kill them, like we did here. And of course, you know, if you've got an Achilobator in your pack, that's all the more damage you can be doing to your enemies. And you can, like I said, take down the biggest of opponents in the game. And then the call that I like to use is Mob Rally, and that increases damage while pounced by 20%, and it stacks up to 10 times. So, you know, if you've got 10 Raptors with you, you can get 200% damage, which is kind of crazy. But I think you're only allowed to have 6, so, I mean, still, you know, it's over 100% damage. It's not too shabby to have that multiplier if everybody's using it. And even if you're just by yourself, 20% extra damage when you're pounced is, you know, a significant amount, and it'll really help you take down your opponents a lot quicker. You can see even like you can take down T-Rexes, and I mean we took down Sub-Titan OG Rexes and Apexes, and this PT Rex, as you can see here. A lot of the time, even if you're not doing damage, you can just getting them to, you get the bleed on at the very beginning, and then if you can get them to chase you and run with that bleed, that's really helpful, and that's kind of the goal, especially when you have an Achilobator with you. The more you get your opponent to run, the faster they're going to die, because that bleed's just going to be magnified as they're running like that. What's funny is a lot of people, most people know about that you know, when you have bleed on you, you don't want to run. You want to like try to sit down, obviously, but you can't sit down in battle. So just being immobile is the best thing you can do. But they still panic, and they tend to run around a lot trying to get you. So it's an effective tool in this game, especially on the Apex Killers server. The way the server is balanced and stuff, it's really focuses on it just the way it's all set up. It really gives the bleeders a huge advantage. So it makes this Deinonys a lot more fun to use. This is a clip where I found I was playing solo here, and I found try to find some mid tiers that I can pounce on, like this Cryptops. These guys are super dangerous, but I wanted to try it, especially since I saw him laying down. I knew I could probably get an advantage. So I stacked the bleed really early on, and one of their abilities is this charge that he's using. And these guys are they rely on their mobility and their speed to do their damage, and their kit kind of relies around moving fast and running around and using that charge and stuff. And all those abilities are just going to be making him bleed more. So it's kind of a good target. Anything that runs faster is dependent on running really fast for its abilities and for its kit is a great target for the Deinonys. So I thought this was a good chance to get a 1v1 kill here on a mid tier. And then you can see right here, he actually ends up just bleeding out while I'm up on top of the rock. And I was full health, as you can see. So it was a good fight. And then the rest of these clips are going to be the Achilobator gameplay, where I was actually acting as the Achilobator in the Mob Boss pack, and I had Deinonys supporting me. And this is my Achilobator here. The build that I use is a acceleration speed subspecies for that extra acceleration getting in and out. So unlike the Deinonys, this guy can benefit greatly from acceleration speed. It's not horrible, but they're a little bit bigger Obviously, they're a lot bigger than the Deinonys, but they're just big enough to where some of the sub apexes can really keep up with you, and you're a bigger target, so it's easier to hit you. So you, I think, really need that extra acceleration to get in and out of battle. The other two subspecies are bleed damage, which this doesn't really have a lot that does bleed, so I didn't think that made much sense. And then there's health recovery, which also can be really good, especially on the Apex Killer server, because the combat timer is only 30 seconds, so you can really control that combat timer and keep it off a lot in those long fights against the bigger creatures, where you can heal while your opponent is bleeding. So that's a good one too, but I like to use the acceleration speed one myself. And then it's got a couple of passives, strong claws, which makes it where you can't be knocked off while you're latched, and then it's got strong grip, where you can gain 200% increased armor for 10 seconds after you pounce. And then it also has Raptor Strikes and a regular bite. I use regular bite for the same reason. The Raptor Strikes is very, very useful only when you're pounced. Other than that, it's going to put you at a disadvantage for hit and run type fights, especially if you're solo. You need that bite. I think you need the extra damage per bite on the regular bite that offers. Shred is a good one to use when you're focused really on pouncing and doing a ton of damage on your opponents when you're pounced, but I still think bite's a better option overall. And then for the passives, if I'm by myself, I'll use Lone Hunter, but in a pack, I always use Mob Boss, and that increases the damage of small raptors by like 13%, and it can stack 4 times. So that's an amazing ability in a Mob Boss pack. And then either the Claw Attack or the Cruel Swipe are both very good. I tend to use the Claw Attack just because it's going to be useful for a wider range of opponents, and you never know what you're going to run into on these. Sometimes it's bigger guys, and sometimes it's stuff your size or even smaller than you. So I like to have the Claw Attack so I know I'm doing the most damage to the most various amounts of targets, whereas the Cruel Swipe is only going to be doing a lot of damage on heavier enemies. It does damage on the smaller stuff too, but it's a slower animation. It's harder to land on the smaller stuff, and then it's not going to be doing as much damage as the regular claw attack would be to like opponents that are your size or smaller, but it does a lot more damage to bigger opponents. So I think the claw attack, just because of its shorter cooldown and quicker animation, is a better choice overall. But they're both good. It really comes down to personal preference, really. For the hide, when I'm in a pack, I use Strength in Numbers, and that increases the armor by 10% for each nearby raptor in your group, which is super helpful to get you a little more tanky. And then if I'm by myself, I just use Hollow Bones, and that gives me a reduced stamina when I jump. The other two are okay, but those are the two that I use mainly. And then you've got your Ripping Kick and your Pounce. The Ripping Kick is an excellent attack. It lunges forward and you do bleed. That's your bleed attack, and it uses some stamina to use it, but that's how you can start stacking bleed on your opponent and get them to chase you. And then of course it's got the Pounce. And then I use Counterbalance for my tail, so you use less stamina when you're running. And then I like to use the Bark sometimes for the call, for the voice call. That'll increase the attack of your raptors. That's what I'm using here. That helps them do more damage. And then if I'm by myself, I use Panicking Sprint, where you replenish some stamina, and it also reduces the attack damage of all creatures within 30 meters. But that one's also good to use in a pack. It's kind of I'd switch between the two. It just depends on what I'm going for. If I think we need the extra damage, then I'll use the Bark. But I think most of the time I'm using Panicking Sprint, because I think that extra stamina that you gain is super important, especially after you get done pouncing something. It takes a lot of stamina, and to have that little burst of stamina afterwards, it's very, very helpful. And it's also helpful to reduce their damage, by 20% too, because you're usually fighting larger creatures that do tons of damage. So if you can reduce that damage at any point, that's really helpful as well. And then sometimes when I'm solo, if I'm like running from a meg or a pack of megs or something like that, you can run a little bit faster than them, and then you can use that call to get some stamina back so that you can get away, whereas otherwise they might be able to catch up to you. So it's a very useful call, that panicking sprint. I think that's the one that I favor. But you can see in these clips, I mean, we're taking out sub-apex, apexes, sub-titans. They're very good against just about any opponent. The smaller stuff that you fight, your raptors can really help you with, and then these big guys, you can create diversions and distractions while the Deinonys are able to pounce on them. And then if you can get your pounce on there and get extra damage stacked up, it's even better. But the damage that we're all stacking together with the mob boss perk and the calls is pretty insane. I mean, you can see how fast we're taking out some of these very large creatures. And like I say, the bread and butter for both of them, the Donicus and the Achilobator, is the pounce, as you can see here, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. You got to be careful to make sure you're pouncing in the back of enemies and not in the front, because if you pounce in the front, sometimes you can get bit, or you can land on a spot where they can actually bite you. So you want to try to land that on the back, and if you can get that mastered, it's a amazing playable that I think everybody will enjoy. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. That's the Raptor packs, one of my favorites to play. I'll be playing this a lot lately, especially in my live streams. And as always, I hope to see you out there in Gondola. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.